Hi, my name's Emmy Golding and I'm the Director of Psychology at the Mental Health Recovery Institute. The World Health Organization says that worker suicide is the result of a complex interaction between the vulnerabilities in the individual and factors in the work environment that trigger stress reactions and make for poor mental well-being. As leaders, we have a legal responsibility to provide a safe and healthy workplace, and that includes managing the stress levels at work. It's been estimated that suicide costs the Australian economy around $17.5 billion per year, and death claims paid out for suicide by life insurers is more than $100 million a year. But money aside, suicide cuts life short and leaves scars. Sometimes we hear that a person threatening suicide is just crying out for attention and they won't really do it. This too is a myth. If a person is threatening suicide, they are clearly in distress about their situation, and we should take action to help, regardless of whether we think they are serious or not, or what we think the level of risk is. If a person's crying out for help, let's help them. In fact, most people who have taken their life did reach out for help at some point. Understanding the myths around suicide can help us identify warning signs earlier and take the appropriate action. These are perhaps the top 5 myths circulating around suicide. The first one, people who suicide are weak or cowards. In fact, the person who's considering suicide is suffering immensely, which takes great strength to bear. Suicide's not an easy way out, physically or emotionally. The second, people who suicide are brave and honourable. Well, in fact, while some cultures do consider suicide an honourable act in certain situations, we also have to be careful not to glamorise or glorify suicide. For these reasons, there are very strict regulations about how suicide's reported in the media. Number 3, people who suicide are all mentally unwell. In fact, 90% of people who have taken their life were found to have a mental illness, but that means that there's 10% who don't. While some people might not have a mental illness, what we did see in common is that they had a sudden loss: job, finances, relationship, or a loved one. Others might have come to the decision to take their life after much consideration of their circumstances. For example, perhaps a person has reached an age where they feel they don't wish to be a burden on others and they'll end it their way. Or perhaps they have a terminal illness. These are examples of cases where the person's not mentally unwell. The next one, people who suicide are selfish. In fact, usually when people think this, it's because they're focusing on the feelings of the friends and the family left behind. What we know is that the person thinking about suicide is in such a degree of suffering that they consider the pain of living to be worse than the pain caused to friends and family. In many cases, the person feels like a burden on others and they think they'll be better off without me. So it's not a selfish act. And the last one, people who suicide want to die. In fact, the majority of people who have attempted suicide say they didn't want to die, but they just didn't want to continue living with the suffering they were in. Most people also state they're glad they didn't die. So how many of these were you surprised to learn were in fact a myth? When you're assisting someone who might be thinking of suicide, remember that their way of thinking is very different from how they would normally think. Regardless of our own personal beliefs and values about suicide, we need to let go of any judgment in order to help them as best we can. If watching this video has made you concerned about someone at work or a friend or family member, please contact one of the specialist services listed on the screen here. Now, as leaders and work colleagues, there's something very important we can do. We can learn to identify the warning signs of suicide so we can reach out to someone at risk and help before things move beyond the point of no return. So please share this video, and if you haven't already, download our Suicide Warning Signs Guide and familiarise yourself with the 13 warning signs of a person at risk of suicide. And if you'd like to develop your skills in this area, we also offer an online suicide prevention course. In it, you'll learn some practical, life-saving skills to identify the warning signs early and intervene correctly. The course can be completed on any desktop or tablet at a time that's convenient to you. Head to the link on the screen to find out more. Thank you and take care.